chosen one, they had elaborate plans for your demise, meticulously crafted in darkness. But mid-execution, God himself intervened with divine authority, commanding them to cease immediately or face his unlimited power. The Almighty drew an uncrossable line in the cosmos, establishing boundaries they dared not challenge, and they fled in terror, abandoning years of calculation in an instant, their weapons falling uselessly as they scattered before divine wrath, unleashed in your defense. They've been working against you from the shadows while smiling to your face. Right now, as you absorb these words, their elaborate schemes designed to dismantle your life piece by piece lie exposed in the harsh light of truth. They came disguised as mentors and opportunities, building trust while secretly extracting everything valuable from your life. Your ideas became their intellectual property. Your innovations were repackaged under their names. Your connections were systematically redirected to serve their purposes. The psychological warfare was their masterpiece. They made you question your own perception of reality. Remember those moments when you knew something was wrong, but everyone around you insisted you were imagining things? That wasn't paranoia. That was your God-given intuition detecting the manipulation they had perfected. Every environment they created around you was engineered for failure. Projects missing critical information they forgot to share. Teams briefed against you before your arrival. Resources promised but never delivered. Deadlines designed to be impossible. Each scenario crafted to showcase your weaknesses while hiding your strengths. They came disguised as mentors and opportunities, building trust while secretly extracting everything valuable from your life. Your ideas became their intellectual property. Your innovations were repackaged under their names. Your connections were systematically redirected to serve their purposes. The psychological warfare was their masterpiece. They made you question your own perception of reality. Remember those moments when you knew something was wrong, but everyone around you insisted you were imagining things? That wasn't paranoia. That was your God-given intuition detecting the manipulation they had perfected. Every environment they created around you was engineered for failure. Projects missing critical information they forgot to share. Teams briefed against you before your arrival. Resources promised but never delivered. Deadlines designed to be impossible. Each scenario crafted to showcase your weaknesses while hiding your strengths. Your reputation, that precious currency in any sphere of influence, became their primary target. Subtle rumors planted like seeds in fertile soil. Half-truths mixed with fabrications, character assassination disguised as concerned observations. Every whisper precisely calculated to undermine your credibility before you could even defend yourself. They controlled information like a weapon, critical details withheld until after decisions were required, non-essential data flooding your attention to obscure what actually mattered. False choices presented while viable alternatives remained hidden. Artificial emergencies created to force rushed judgments, all of it designed to keep you perpetually off balance, responding instead of initiating, defending instead of advancing, reacting instead of leading. While they congratulated themselves on their invisible web of deception, they had no idea they were performing on the ultimate stage. God wasn't just watching, he was documenting everything with perfect accuracy. Every text message coordination tomorrow's attack against you. Every email plotting your professional demise. Every phone call strategizing your social isolation. Every meeting where your destruction was planned in detail. The Almighty preserved it all in divine records that no human technology could access or erase. When they whispered, "No one will ever know," God was taking notes. When they celebrated covering their tracks, the Lord was compiling comprehensive evidence. When they believed themselves operating in complete darkness, they were actually performing under the brightest spotlight in existence, divine attention. But God's patience during this period wasn't inaction. Like a master trainer allowing resistance to build strength, divine wisdom permitted just enough opposition to develop your spiritual discernment without allowing permanent damage. Every attack they launched actually equipped you to recognize similar tactics in the future. The timing of divine intervention was calculated with supernatural precision. Not too early, before you could learn to identify the patterns. Not too late, after irreparable harm occurred. But at exactly the perfect moment when exposure would create maximum clarity while preventing further damage. God waited until their network was fully revealed, their connections undeniable, their ultimate objectives clear. He waited until the evidence was comprehensive and irrefutable. He waited until that single moment when the case against them stood complete and their trap was about to spring. Then everything changed. In one universe-altering instant, God stepped directly into their carefully orchestrated plan and said, "Enough." The creator of galaxies didn't suggest they reconsider. He didn't recommend they modify their approach. He commanded them to cease immediately or face unlimited divine power. An uncrossable line was drawn in the cosmos, establishing boundaries they dared not challenge. Physical reality itself began working against their schemes. Resources they counted on suddenly became unavailable. Locations they had secured mysteriously became inaccessible. Technology they depended upon failed at critical moments. Weather patterns shifted, transportation broke down, communications systems malfunctioned, physical barriers appeared where clear paths once existed. The contract they were certain would destroy you got lost in transit. The meeting where your reputation would be assassinated was cancelled due to unforeseen circumstances. The trap they had set with such confidence was rendered completely ineffective through seemingly random events, but God's intervention went beyond physical circumstances. He activated key individuals in their network. People who had accepted their narrative without question suddenly felt inexplicable doubts. Supporters they thought were securely in their camp began asking uncomfortable questions. Allies they presumed loyal started examining evidence independently. This wasn't human persuasion. This was divine inspiration altering perception at the fundamental level. At this pivotal moment, God established spiritual barriers around you that they found absolutely impenetrable. Tactics that had worked flawlessly against others suddenly lost all effectiveness when deployed against you. Strategies that had previously succeeded now failed without explanation. The Lord placed supernatural protection around your mind and spirit, the areas previously most vulnerable to their manipulation. Attempts to trigger emotional responses fell flat. Efforts to implant self-doubt no longer penetrated. Words designed to activate past trauma surprisingly lacked their former power. This cognitive shielding didn't come through human effort or psychological technique. It manifested as a direct divine gift precisely when you needed it most. The Almighty made unmistakably clear that access to you was now permanently revoked. No appeals process existed. No negotiation remained possible. No alternative routes of attack were left available. The decree came from the highest authority. Contact severed, influence terminated, manipulation ended, not temporarily, not partially, absolutely and permanently. Hold that thought for a moment. I need your attention for something very important. For the first time, we're revealing everything we, Know about personal power, healing yourself and healing others. No filters, no holding back. We have been quietly adding all the occult secrets we've collected over literal years of spiritual practice. The techniques and wisdom that transformed us from controlled pawns into conscious creators are now available to those ready to walk the same path. This is your invitation to join Obsidian Inner Order and support our platform so we can continue growing our megaphone to reach other chosen ones waiting for activation. By joining the Obsidian Inner Order, you're not just gaining access to forbidden knowledge, you're becoming part of a movement that's rewriting reality itself. It's a 360 win for all of us. Link is in the description. Discovery processes exposed everything. Internal communications they thought were deleted forever surfaced in legal filings. Confidential strategies became public record. Witness after witness found supernatural courage to testify against them. Legal cases they thought were buried, resurrected with devastating new evidence. Lawsuits they believed they'd crushed, reopened with supernatural backing. Settlements forced through intimidation, overturned as victims found divine courage to speak. Their own greed became the weapon of their destruction. Investments made with stolen resources produced catastrophic losses. Business ventures built on your intellectual property collapsed spectacularly. Financial schemes designed to profit from your downfall backfired with mathematical precision. Watch the supernatural mathematics. Every dollar stolen from you returned as multiplied losses in their accounts. Every blocked opportunity became a financial disaster in their portfolio. Every diverted resource transformed into crushing liability. Professional exile happened at lightning speed. Industry associations uninvited them from conferences. Awards were reviewed for revocation. Colleagues scrambled to distance themselves. Partners began auditing past collaborations for signs of manipulation. Social media became their graveyard. Former allies shared manipulation stories. Victims found courage to speak publicly. Pattern recognition spread like wildfire as people connected the dots between seemingly unrelated incidents. The same social weapons they'd used against you turned against them with amplified force. Networks that took decades to build dissolved in weeks. Relationships cultivated through years of positioning evaporated overnight. Professional communities that once feared them suddenly found collective courage to reject their presence entirely. While they lost everything, you gained everything, multiplied. Intellectual property stolen from you reverted through unexpected legal discoveries. Ideas they'd claimed were proven to be your original concepts. Patents filed using your innovations were contested and awarded back to you. Contracts secured through manipulation were overturned. Financial resources diverted from your projects returned through court-ordered restitution. Professional opportunities they'd blocked suddenly opened with enhanced terms. The final judgment was complete exile from every territory they'd once controlled. Organizations removed them from leadership. Institutions revoked their access and privileges. Communities rejected their presence permanently. Appeals were denied without consideration. Attempts to rebuild relationships met immediate resistance. This wasn't temporary setback. This was permanent banishment enforced by supernatural barriers they couldn't overcome. The moment of revelation arrived like a thunderclap in a clear sky. When the truth finally emerged about who was standing behind you, the shock rippled through every circle that had witnessed your persecution. People who had watched you struggle, who had seen you attacked from all sides, who had perhaps even participated in the whispers and doubts, suddenly realized the magnitude of what they had been observing. This wasn't just another workplace conflict or personal dispute. This was someone under the direct protection of the Almighty God himself. The horror on their faces was unmistakable when they understood that every attack against you had been an attack against divine authority. Every whispered criticism had been noted by heavenly surveillance. Every scheme to undermine you had been an act of rebellion against the Creator of the universe. Those who had remained silent during your persecution suddenly grasped that their neutrality had placed them dangerously close to opposing God's chosen. Witnesses who had done nothing to defend you realized they had been watching divine property being vandalized. Bystanders who had accepted the narrative against you discovered they had been complicit in a campaign against someone under supernatural protection. The revelation sent shockwaves through their understanding of reality itself. If God was this personally invested in defending you, what did that say about your true identity and purpose? If the Creator of galaxies had drawn such clear boundaries around you, what did that reveal about the significance of the work you were meant to accomplish? Even more terrifying was the realization of what could have happened to them. Had they gone further in their opposition, had they escalated their attacks, had they crossed lines they were contemplating crossing, they would have found themselves in direct conflict with omnipotent power. The knowledge that God had been watching everything, recording every conversation, preserving every detail of the campaign against you, left them paralyzed with a fear they had never experienced. They understood that divine justice operates on a completely different scale than human consequences, and that mercy had been the only thing standing between them and accountability for their actions or inaction. With comprehensive evidence gathered and boundaries established, God directly confronted your opponents with irrefutable proof of every hidden action. Their private conversations were quoted verbatim, their secret communications revealed in detail, their confidential strategies exposed with perfect accuracy. This supernatural download of information left them stunned, facing undeniable proof that nothing had escaped divine notice. Even at this point, God's mercy extended one final opportunity for course correction. A clear path of repentance and withdrawal was presented, a divine off-ramp offering the chance to voluntarily cease operations without facing full consequences. This wasn't weakness. This was supreme power exercising restraint, offering mercy before justice demanded complete payment. But alongside this final opportunity came absolute clarity about consequences should they choose to persist. God revealed with terrifying specificity exactly what awaited continued opposition. Not vague spiritual warnings, but concrete, tangible outcomes detailed with chilling precision. The message delivered with such authority that its truth could not be questioned, only accepted or rejected. Throughout this confrontation, the Almighty revealed himself as your dedicated defender, not a distant deity observing from afar, but an actively engaged protector personally invested in your well-being. The Creator of galaxies announced with unmistakable clarity that an attack against you constituted a direct challenge to divine authority itself. The terms presented left no room for negotiation. The ultimatum contained no flexibility, no compromise options, no middle ground. The choice stood in stark binary simplicity: complete withdrawal or direct confrontation with God himself. To ensure complete understanding, God permitted them to experience just a fraction, a momentary taste of his full authority. Not the totality, which no human could survive, but enough to eliminate all doubt about what continued opposition would mean. Their response was immediate and absolute terror, the sudden comprehension of exactly who they had provoked, the dawning awareness of how completely outmatched they truly were, the horrifying recognition that their actions, which they believed hidden from all eyes, had been continuously monitored by the one being with both complete knowledge and unlimited power. power to respond. What followed was the fastest, most comprehensive retreat in the history of their organization. Leadership roles were abruptly resigned without satisfactory explanation. Organizational ties mysteriously severed overnight. Projects they once fought to control suddenly no longer aligned with their priorities. Their physical presence, once constant and oppressive, vanished almost immediately. This wasn't strategic withdrawal, this was panic-driven flight. God supernaturally injected overwhelming fear into their decision-making process. Not productive caution that prevents harmful actions, but paralyzing dread that made continued opposition emotionally impossible. This divinely implanted fear overrode even their most logical strategic assessments, compelling immediate retreat regardless of organizational cost. Most telling was their complete abandonment of carefully constructed long-term strategies. Plans developed over years, investments maintained at great expense, positions secured through significant effort, all suddenly abandoned without any attempt to salvage or transfer. The Lord supernaturally removed even their desire to continue the fight. The passionate opposition that once drove their daily activities suddenly evaporated, replaced by overwhelming compulsion to create maximum distance between themselves and you. They retreated to territories they believed safely distant from God's direct attention, reconstructing narratives to justify their sudden departure while concealing their genuine motivation. Raw terror at the prospect of facing divine consequences. With opposition eliminated and your protection secured, God initiated systematic restoration of everything stolen from you. But this wasn't simple replacement. This was supernatural multiplication. Resources that had been diverted began returning with increase. Opportunities that had been blocked were replaced with superior alternatives. Time that had been lost was redeemed through supernatural acceleration of progress. Watch in amazement as God transformed their former attacks into your current blessings. The very areas where they inflicted deepest damage became sources of your greatest strength. Experience they once used against you now qualified you for exceptional opportunity. Knowledge gained through adversity positioned you as an authority precisely where they had attempted to disqualify you. Unexpected advocates appeared to restore your reputation. Individuals with exactly the right influence in precisely the right circles suddenly felt compelled to speak truth about your character and contribution. People previously uninvolved found themselves inexplicably motivated to correct false narratives about you. The acceleration of progress following their removal defied natural explanation. Doors previously sealed opened without effort. Resources, formerly scarce, suddenly became abundant. Connections once impossibly distant now formed with remarkable ease. This supernatural fast-forward compensated for seasons of artificial delay, compressing years of progress into months, months into weeks, weeks into days. God used your experience to qualify you for purposes beyond anything you had previously imagined. The specialized knowledge gained through this trial equipped you with rare expertise invaluable for coming assignments. Your first-hand understanding of both opposition tactics and divine intervention uniquely positioned you to guide others through similar battles. What they intended as disqualification, God transformed into specialized qualification. Former battlegrounds, sites where you experienced your most painful defeats, now transformed into platforms for your greatest demonstrations of purpose. The exact locations where they publicly humiliated you became stages for your most visible victories. Spaces where they declared your disqualification became venues for your most significant achievements. This poetic divine justice rewrote historical narratives with perfect symmetry. Your vindication created waves that extended far beyond your immediate situation. Other victims of similar attacks found courage to speak their truth. People who had suffered comparable manipulation recognized their experiences in your story. Survivors of coordinated campaigns felt empowered to expose their own oppressors. Communities that had enabled such behavior began examining their complicity. Organizations that had protected manipulators started implementing accountability measures. Systems that had favored abusers were restructured to support victims. Your public vindication became a template for divine justice that others could reference. Your supernatural protection demonstrated possibilities that victims had never imagined. Your restoration proved that complete recovery was possible even after devastating attacks. The fear factor shifted completely. People who had used similar tactics suddenly found themselves worried about divine consequences. Manipulators who had operated with impunity began experiencing supernatural anxiety about their methods. Abusers who had felt invincible started questioning whether their protection would last. Educational institutions began teaching about the patterns you had exposed. Professional organizations developed guidelines to prevent the behaviors you had endured. Legal frameworks were strengthened to address the tactics that had been used against you. Your experience became a case study in spiritual warfare, divine intervention, and supernatural justice that influenced how others understood and responded to coordinated persecution. As you advanced into newly cleared territory, God provided critical intelligence about potential remaining threats. Not all opposition had permanently ceased. Some had merely retreated to regroup and potentially return through different channels. Divine foresight anticipated these maneuvers long before implementation, providing advance warning with sufficient detail to establish effective countermeasures. God now established you in the very positions your enemies once occupied. Their seats of influence, their access to key decision-makers, their control over critical resources, all systematically transferred into your stewardship. This divine repositioning wasn't mere revenge, it was strategic reallocation, placing resources previously used against you into hands that would deploy them for purposes aligned with divine intent. They had calculated every variable, strategized every contingency, and executed what they believed was a foolproof plan to destroy what God had destined for you. They amassed resources, recruited allies, and operated in shadows, absolutely certain their combined human effort could overpower divine purpose. They were wrong. In a single universe-altering moment, the creator of galaxies drew an uncrossable line. The maker of mountains established an immovable boundary. The designer of oceans declared with unquestionable authority, "This far and no further." Faced with the ultimate choice, immediate withdrawal or direct confrontation with God himself, their hasty retreat revealed which option they selected. Now you stand in territory supernaturally cleared, divinely protected, and strategically positioned for your next assignment. What they meant for destruction, God transformed into foundation. What they designed as your ending, God re-engineered as your beginning. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't luck. This wasn't random circumstance. This was divine intervention at its most direct and personal. The battle they thought they were winning was actually the setup for your greatest victory. The trap they believed was closing around you became the launching pad for your supernatural advancement. And this moment of divine vindication and supernatural positioning, this is just the beginning of what God has planned for your future.